The condition is really crazy condition.
And that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Matteo Iachino giving Antoine Elbow a run for his money. Here we go. Woo! What a finish.
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder.
Welcome to the Windsurfing Podcast, back again for episode 13. And this week we have a course racing legend. Yes, the world champ from 1989. What, you wasn't even born then? Well, stay with it. There's a really interesting chat with this bloke. He has been around the block. He went to his first event, I think, in Silt. And from that day forward, he said he is never going to be without the right gear again. He was going to learn the tricks of the trade, and he did just that. He then formed a formidable team, well, the team, with Kevin and Matt Pritchard, and went on to take down Bjorn and stop the 13-year reign at the top. He also set up the PWA as we know it today. He also formed Maui Sails, which, as we heard from the Kevin Pritchard podcast, didn't quite work out as planned. And we hear all the sort of ins and outs of that story. And then we also hear about his newly found passion for the Ironman. And he did the Hawaiian Ironman in 11 hours. Solid. Who is it? It is, of course, Phil McGain.
Hey Phil, how's it going? Thank you so much for taking the time.
No problem.
You're, from what I know, you're in Sydney, Australia, your hometown, pretty much, although you've been living in Maui for how long now?
I was in Maui for 33 years and usually back and forwards to Australia a little bit, but wanted to come down here and see my family. My mum's getting older, and just I did the week quarantine in a hotel in the city and then got out about a week ago. So it's actually pretty nice. Some nice Sydney weather right now.
Yeah. Do you windsurf the old Sydney Harbour time to time now, or you passed that?
I've kind of passed that. If I come down here, I don't really have gear, but in the past, I've really enjoyed being out in the middle of Sydney Harbour on my Formula stuff and blasting up and down from Manly down to the Opera House and then out into the ocean again. So it's a beautiful place to windsurf.
Yeah, definitely some picturesque stuff there. But
and then back in the old days, I would sail from my house up here at the Parramatta River and then sail up through the harbour and under the harbour bridge and up into the harbour and do some sessions up there. But it must have been the early 80s. They restricted windsurfing through the main harbour area, the harbour bridge and Opera House. So I tried to get up through a couple times on my course racing stuff. I would get pulled over by the police and told to go back down the river again.
Oh, I didn't know that. I remember some, like, once when the Olympics were there was some really cool shots with the Opera House in the background, but I guess that was just a one-time thing then. Yeah, I asked around and the guy said that even like up until this year, you sometimes randomly just show up at Hokipa, bust out your carbon art, bust out some of the new TRs and just, have a few little laydowns in pavilions, few massive jumps. Like, basically what they told me is like the guy's 57 and he's still enjoying it, from time to time. So is that often?
We have the local Maui series, and it's easy to get to Hokipa from where I live in Haiku. So if you want to go for a session, you just go to Hokipa, and sometimes it's a slalom session, and then sometimes it might be a wave session.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, you're originally from Sydney, Australia, starting windsurfing there, I guess at that time, like late 70s. It was all about longboarding. And when was the time that you realized, like, oh, I can actually maybe make a living out of it, or get good at it at least, or do something towards that?
Yeah. Well, back in the day, in the late 70s, there was only really the windsurfing class and a little bit of fun board. So as the fun board started filtering to Australia, and we had the magazines, we saw what was going on in Hawaii, and there was Robbie was making videos at that point in time, Robbie Nash, and so we started, a lot of the guys doing windsurfer class got into the shortboards, and it was certainly a lot of fun doing it in the waves. And in the beginning, it was taking our windsurfers in the waves, and then eventually it was getting shortboards and then putting a windsurfer sail on a shortboard and taking that in the waves. And then the competition started popping up. The Torquay Rip Curl Classic was down at actually where Jason is from, down at Victoria, and we would go down there for that. There was a little bit of money, and we got some money, and then over those couple of years of the early 80s, we had some professional competitions, and the Hawaiian guys would come down here, and we saw what was going on, and there was things popping up in Europe. The World Cup started developing in Europe, I think around 81 or 82. So in 85, I really started to get better at funboard. I did a competition in Guam. It was the Cocos Cup. And at that time, it was the highest prize money event in the world. It was 100,000 total prize money. And I went there in 85, and all the guys from the World Cup were there because they want to make money, and they were great competitors. And it was on a F2 Lightning board. So I got hold of a F2 Lightning before the competition here in Sydney and trained my butt off on it and figured out how to make it go fast. And I got second in 85, and in 86 I went back and won it. So I pocketed, I think, $7,500 in 85 from second, and then in 86 $10,000. So that was a lot of money back then. When I left school, I was actually a ship and boat builder. That was my job, and I guess it was a chosen path that I was going to, have a regular job. And then after I won some prize money, I realized that I could make a better living at windsurfing than, earning $100 a week as a ship and boat builder.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a no-brainer. In 86, I started traveling. I went to Hawaii and spent 85. I went to Hawaii the first time. 86, I went back there for a much longer period because I won $10,000. So I threw it in the Paia Bank of Hawaii and stayed over there and trained and just enjoyed and tried to improve my skills in Maui, where a lot of the pros were already residing, and the level was super high. The wind was blowing every day, so I would be out there, my slalom stuff and wave stuff and course racing stuff nearly every day training. So 86, I think I went to the Pro-Am in the Gorge. That was another big event that was, on the map for European guys. Would come over and do the Gorge Pro-Am. And I can't remember if I won it in 86 or 87. I think maybe 86 I got sixth or something. And then I went to Europe, and in actually 85 I went to Europe as my first World Cup in Silt. It was the same year that Anders showed up and Bjorn showed up to the first World Cups. And I did terrible. I was back in the 30s and 40s. I knew how to race, but my equipment and my preparation for racing in Europe was not up to the level of the European guys. And I was pretty discouraged at that point about spending money to go from Australia to Europe and having to get cars and deal with excess baggage. And it was a big haul for us from Sydney, Australia, to go to Europe and jump into doing World Cup in Europe. It was very new to us. The competition style was completely different from what we were doing mostly in Australia, and the European guys, and even, you know, guys coming from United States like Ken Winner and Robbie Nash and Pete Cabrina, all those guys were already at a really high level on course racing. And so I showed up in Silt and got my butt handed to me pretty heavily. After Silt, we went down to Holland to did a World Cup down there. I ended up getting 5th in slalom, so that was all of a sudden my eyes opened up, and I got a little bit more encouragement from doing well in Holland. I actually met there with Bic Sport and got a pretty good contract for 1987 from Bic, because I had done well, and I had done well in the Cocos Cup and won that against a lot of the World Cup guys. So once I got a pretty good contract, I got a good contract with Gastra, and then it was just a matter of working your way through training, trying to get good equipment after being in Silt. And, you know, back in the 30s and 40s, I realized that the equipment was really, really important.
Yeah, hell of a set.
As it is today.
Exactly.
You guys were always working on your equipment, working on the fins, and even though it's there is a lot of production equipment used, it's still about tuning and getting on the water and getting comfortable with your equipment, and then taking that on race day, you know, and being comfortable on the race course and being able to race and you know, relax and really, you know, race the board and look around at the competition and use that board speed. And you know, if you have board speed, you become a tactical genius really quickly.
It's easier, so much easier, isn't it?
It is. So my big lesson was I have the skill and I have the work ethic, but I need good equipment.
Yeah.
To do competitions. At the professional competitions, you need good equipment. And that was one of my motivations for working really hard, was to dial in my equipment and get the best equipment I could to be on the race course and put my skills to test.
Funny how so many athletes pinpoint certain weaknesses that they first had in their career and they turn it into strengths. I mean, when you ask anybody about Phil McGain, they will tell you like the gear, you know, the gear master, the, you know, the tuning, the, you know, every fine little detail, every fine little setup, you know? So I guess we know the origin now. Silt, 85, getting your ass handed to you.
Well, I came from a sailing background. So I learned how to, you know, sail sailboats before I windsurfed. And I learned to sail actually right where I'm sitting right now in the Parramatta River up the harbour. And there's a lot of different wind shifts and currents and lots of variables that go on to put yourself through a course as most efficiently as you can. And windsurfing was no different. I felt like I had good sailing skills and trained hard, but again, the equipment was really important, as you will hear speaking to a lot of these professional guys. I mean, I saw the interview with Anders, and then obviously with Kevin, and talking to Patrick about equipment and his shaping and his success as a brand now. It's the equipment is really important, and that was a lot of my focus. And my teammates, we would work on making sure that we had good equipment.
Yeah. First of all, I definitely appreciate you listening, and we'll discuss some tips later for making it even more interesting. But I guess my question was, how obvious was it for you that to become successful or to have a career, you kind of need to move to Maui? That this is where, even though there was a bunch of Aussie guys, strong guys, strong scene at that time, but still you'd have to probably move there or spend, at least big part of your year there, because of the equipment, I guess. When did that first become obvious?
Probably my second trip to Maui, it became really obvious that I could spend hours and hours on the water in Maui and making good use of that wind. And, the conditions that we had, even early in the morning, you could go down and go to the harbor, in Kahului Harbor, and test your formula stuff. And so you really had the whole day of wind available to you. And also the convenience of Maui was a little bit more convenient to get to Europe and to get to mainland US, Japan, South America, rather than being in Sydney in Australia. It was, down under down here, we're pretty far away from everywhere. And Hawaii was a little bit closer, and it wasn't that far from Australia. It's a 9-hour flight from Sydney. So it became an obvious choice to base there and to continue to train and develop equipment. And we were doing photo shoots in Hawaii and Maui, and a lot of the manufacturers, a lot of sail makers were based doing their research and development there. So, it became a real hub for pro windsurfing and development and photo shoots, and the whole sport was being developed, and you had to be on top of your gear and you had to be training.
Yeah. How much was it? How much do you think it was really the conditions, and how much was it actually that, I don't know, North Shore Fins was down the road, Alex Aguera was down the road, Barry Spanier was up the road, and all these guys developing the gear so fast, and if you were out of that circle, you probably wouldn't be competitive on the race course, would you?
Well, there's a lot of energy behind that, and a lot of motivation when you're in that whole scene, and people are at the beach testing fins, and you see not only the pro riders at the beach, but you see the sail designers at the beach, and you see the guys who are making the fins at the beach. And a lot of these guys were also windsurfing too. So there was a lot of energy and a lot of momentum with the sport, and a lot of development. There was, we had a lot of prize money. There was a lot of things at stake. There was the industry was booming also. So the numbers for manufacturers back then was double or triple what they are now. So there was a lot of money in the sport as far as selling equipment and prize money for pro riders and the whole development of the tour also as well.
Yeah. Paint us a little picture. You drive to Kanaha at 11 or 12 or whatever, and like how many teams, how many manufacturers, how many fin guys, how many shapers, how many people from the industry, let's say, are there, and what's going on at the beach? Is there a ton of secrecy? Is there people bouncing ideas off of each other?
I mean, a lot of, you're focusing on yourself for sure. You mean talking about back in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, exactly.
You're definitely focusing on yourself to try to figure out your gear. There's a lot to it, and you need to figure stuff out on your own to know what's wrong and what's right. Secrecy, everyone is in the open. Everyone is at the beach. You can look at other people's sails. If you had some time on your own, you could go to some beaches where there was less people. We would do it. And sometimes we were trying to find certain conditions to trade in, because the competitions which had a lot of the money was in Europe. So it wasn't about going to Hookkeeper and riding big waves and hitting the lip and doing aerials and jumps. It was about finding certain conditions that suited what we were doing in competition. So it might be either going to Kanaha or going over to Waiahu, which is past the Kahului Harbour, and sailing onshore over there on our wave stuff and learning about what we needed to do with our wave equipment in onshore conditions, rather than just being at Hukipa, because, you know, Hukipa is such a specialty wave, and we had boards that worked in Hukipa, yes, but we needed to have boards that worked in all conditions, especially in competition atmosphere and competition conditions, because you know that when we're not always having the most perfect conditions for competition, it's not Hukipa.
Yeah.
It's onshore. Sometimes it's crappy and gusty conditions, and we have to compete in those conditions. And it's the same with racing. Now it's amazing the light winds that you guys are competing in, and you still are on. Sometimes you are still on the limit on wind minimums and conditions. So you need to have your equipment efficient, and you know, I just watched some of the foiling that was going on in Silver Plana, and then read also some of the comments from some of the guys about the conditions and some of the rules and things like that being not completely adhered to and not completely fair. So you need to have your equipment working in shitty conditions as well. So secrecy, not so much. You can see what people are doing. You can see people's boards, but you can't see millimeters. You need to know what you're doing and understand that a luff curve will do a certain thing, or a batten will do a certain thing in a sail, or some fins or fin placement will affect the board and the rig in some way.
Yeah. So you mentioned getting on tour in the mid 80s. What kind of tour was it? Was it that sort of rock and roll circus that everybody's sort of describing? Very free, very, like fun orientated? Because you're pretty sure you heard Anders mention that before you got there, it was fun. After you got there, it became work.
Well, it's not only me. It was Robbie was leading the way when we all got into it in '85. He was the professional, and he was the one who would never go out and party, and he would be the one at the beach first thing in the morning, and he'd be the first guy on the water to warm up for the competition. So there was fun when fun was to be had. I mean, I remember in Silt, we would go out and we would have a beer or two in some evenings, and if we knew the wind was going to blow the next day, we'd honk it down and have an early night. But if there was no wind, then we'd go and have a good time. But you know, you're in your 20s, so you can do that when you're in your 20s. You can go out and stay out till midnight or 1 a.m, and then show up at the beach and still be in pretty good shape to compete. But I would say as time goes on and you're on the tour longer, you realize that you're trying to make a living. You're trying to earn money and good prize money, and you want to become more professional and give yourself the best chance you can to put it together on race day.
Yeah. So a few years go by, I guess you perfect your gear, and in 1989 you win the course racing world title. If you were to give a percentage, how much of it was that talent or that skill that you came with to the tour, and how much was it that hard work put behind the gear, behind the tuning, did you win on pure speed, or was it pure gear, pure speed, or was it more like, you kind of out-talented couple of the guys, which the competition was obviously heavy back then, right? Bjorn on top of his game, Anders on top of his game, Robbie still there. You know, a lot of the other guys that, you know, I might be too young to remember, but yeah, definitely wasn't easy.
No, it definitely was a lot of work and a lot of combinations of different things. But in '88, we were all on course racing boards, 12 footers, big, long, 3.5 meter boards. And '89, the sport really changed, started to go over to shortboard in course racing. So I think I was using a 12.5 footer probably half of the year, and then the other half of the year we were on shortboards. At the end of the year, in the last event in Maui, everybody was on shortboards. But the first event that we had was maybe in Almenar in France or somewhere. Everyone was on longboards.
Except for Eric Thieme, is that story true, that he just busted out a slalom board in the course racing and was down the road?
That's true. In Tarifa, I think it would be in '88 in Tarifa. It was super windy, and we're all sailing longboards, and I think it was too windy for Eric on his longboard, and he took his slalom board out, and we got to the top mark and we see this guy way ahead of us, way down the reach, and we're like, who's that out there? And we eventually see that it's Eric. And he took his slalom stuff and he just blitzed us all to the top mark in Tarifa. And it was pretty windy. We were hanging on to small sails on our course, on our 12.5 footers. But Eric took off and he was gone on his slalom stuff. And that was the beginning of the whole course racing days on the short boards. I think the next race, a couple of other guys grabbed their slalom stuff and used their slalom stuff, and then they all of a sudden are back, up in the top 10 where they may not have been before. So when '89, when I won the course racing title, your question was equipment or talent, or I think at that point it's a combination of really everything. You need to have good equipment. You need to be in tune with your equipment. You need to start well. You need to go the right way on the race course. You can't win purely on board speed. I mean, Bjorn, we can talk about Bjorn a little bit later with his board speed, but in '89, I did have some really good boards, and I remember some light wind races in France that I remember having pretty comfortable leads on my course racing stuff, and then other days I would have to work pretty hard, but I was in physically good shape, and at that point I had honed my tactics and figured out how to start and where to start at what place and go which part of the race course to get me the best advantage I could. So I think it's always a combination of equipment, training, the fins and sails and getting everything working together and being comfortable with your equipment.
So you mentioned Bic being your board sponsor, and obviously, as we found out on some previous podcasts, it wasn't like it is now, that even if you get some maybe custom wave boards, it's shaper from the brand shaping it. So who was shaping your boards back then? Who shaped your world title boards?
I had some amazing boards from Richard Green, from Gem.
Yeah.
That was really key for me. I had a couple of boards from Stefan Vandenberg's brother. He was also shaping for Bic, and I was kind of getting equipment from a few different people, but my course racing boards at that time was from Richard. And he was a really good craftsman, and he had been making epoxy boards for a long time. He worked for a company in Annapolis on the East Coast way back in the day called Boardworks. And then he moved to Maui and started working with another guy, Dave Ross. and I was luckily be able to work with Pritchard for a number of years and have some really good equipment. And my waveboards, I was working with guys at Sailboards Maui and getting some waveboards made there, and yeah, so that was, you know, there was a lot of custom board building going on all over the world. I mean, we're all using custom boards. We weren't, even though you might have been sponsored by a big brand, you weren't using, nobody was using production boards.
Yeah. Which is funny that they didn't even think to maybe buy your world title design and put it in production. Nowadays, it seems so obvious, you know, but back then it was like so obvious that you guys wouldn't even touch the production gear, right?
Yeah, well, the production gear was, by the time it came to the competitions, the production gear was outdated, because you could make a board in a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and get it tested and then continue to develop really quickly. So the sport was really evolving quickly with equipment and boards and being able to test sails and do sail development. When I first got into World Cup, we were only doing development maybe a couple of times a year, and we would use production sails, and that's what we raced on. But as time got on, we realized that you can make big gains out of equipment, and when you figured out how to test well and develop your equipment and knew how to tune or to make changes in a sail or a board, then we were pushing that envelope in equipment, and you know, all the top guys had a team behind them. Bjorn had, you know, Barry and Peter Tommen making equipment, and they had a pretty big team, and you know, Anders with the Tiga guys and Neil Pride, and so you had to try to align yourself with people who had common goals and try to find people to work with, board manufacturer or sail development. So those are the things that really hit home for me. Was you can't do it on your own. You need a team, and you need good people, professional people to work with. Not just working with you, but to, you know, align yourself with the manufacturer who is successful and you can have some financial backing and you know, develop boards and train and try to win races that way.
Yeah, sounds completely different to what it is today. But so what kind of numbers are we talking about, like in terms of amount of boards you would go through a year, in terms of money spent on development? Because that goes out of your pocket, right? You have, let's say, I have no idea if these numbers are even close to correct. Let's say maybe you want to elaborate on that. I don't know if you want, but let's say your contract with Big is $100,000 and you drop, I don't know, 50 out of that just on your board development program, right? That goes completely out of your pocket. You pay your shaper, and then I don't know, like rumors have it, Bjorn would show up with 25, 30 boards to a contest, and that's being selected from a much bigger number. So what kind of scale are we talking about?
Well, maybe Bjorn would show up with that many boards, but he would eliminate some boards, you know, during his testing pre-competition, and then pick maybe 3 or 4 boards that he might race on. And then, you know, most of us were able to develop boards and also sell the boards afterwards. So, you know, you might have a budget, or you might put $30,000 or $40,000 into boards, but you were able to sell those boards either to other racers who were beginning to come into World Cup or just general public who wanted to have really good boards. So for me personally, I ended up setting my board building shop up at my place in Haiku, which I bought in 1990. And it was, you know, it was a little business for me. I was making custom boards and selling custom boards to other racers and making boards for myself, and was able to sell those boards afterwards and recoup some of the money. I mean, you guys get a certain allocation of boards now, and at the end of the year, you try to sell those boards and to try to get some money back for it. There wasn't an unlimited budget back in the 80s and 90s for boards. So yeah, we might have built 30 or 40 boards for ourselves during the year, but you had to recoup some of that money back and try to sell them. And of course you kept the best ones for yourself and raced on your best boards. And at the end of the season, they might wear out and sell them or hang on to them for testing reasons. And yeah, it was a lot of the guys would show up with a lot of boards sometimes at the events, but they would test those boards maybe before the event and eliminate maybe 10 boards down to 2 or 3 boards.
Yeah, you mentioned selling.
A lot of boards available, especially if you had a big team. For example, the F2 team, Peter was cranking out boards for maybe 10 people on his team. So it was, if you have a slalom board with 3 different sizes, that's 30 slalom boards. And they're all similar looking, and Bjorn might have to pick a lot of those boards. He could go, well, I want to try all of those boards because I want to have the fastest one. So that's what would happen a lot in some of the big teams. You got access to a lot of boards to test. For me personally, I didn't. I was building a lot of my own boards, so I had to be really efficient and make sure if I put money into a board, especially when I started my own workshop, that I tried to, you know, you have 50-50 chance to make something either faster or slower. So it's pretty good odds. So if you make the right call on, you know, recutting a sail or a change in the sail, then you're going to go forward.
And if you don't go forward, you learn. So
yes, you would. So my goal was to try to go forward. And it was funny, I was listening to Patrick, and he was talking about when he was working with Peter Tom, and Peter was just saying to him, it was like, it's either faster or it's slower, you know? So if it's faster, you're going forward. If it's slower, you're going backwards. So you have to be really careful. You have to be going forwards.
yeah.
So you have to be smart. You know, you have to be smart about your development.
Yeah.
And that's probably where I put a lot of effort into that. And it was funny. And I was laughing because Arnold was talking about my black book that I was, you know, writing all my notes in. And I was just trying to keep track of everything. There's a lot of stuff going on. What fin are you using this day? What's your downhole setting? Because all these things affect your performance.
Yeah. You don't know how many times on the beach I was like, okay, this is so obvious, I'm not going to write it down. And then maybe you use that size sail a month later because there hasn't been any conditions. And then like I have to unscrew and take out all the buttons because I don't remember. I know that the best set of buttons is in there, but I don't remember, you know, if I extended the middle tube or if the big tube is carbon or is it glass or whatever, you know, because I didn't write it down like a total idiot. Now I do, but so many times it happened, you know. So yeah, the black book, you definitely, yeah, we all have our notebooks these days. So I guess that's thanks to you.
All good. There's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
And even though today the equipment is a lot of production equipment, you know, it still takes the same application and same strategy, you know, for testing as it back when we were doing it from when you guys are doing it now. And all those little things are important, where you put your foot straps and what the angle is for the foils and your downhole and this mast and that boom and you know, you're going to professional competitions, and you guys are professional sailors, and you know, you're trying to make a living at it. So you want to apply yourself in a way that you can give yourself the best chance.
Exactly.
And that's, you know, that's the difference between being a good pro and guys that might finish a little bit back, or they may not have the time or the weather conditions to do the training. I mean, like all the guys that go to Tenerife and do their slalom training, they get to do all that tuning and testing before the competition starts. And sometimes you at the competition and you're still trying to figure out what I'm going to use. And it goes on and on and on. And it goes on during the competition too. You're always making little tweaks to harness line or some little tweak to a foot strap position or a mast track position. And you go out and have a really good race and you're like, okay, this is the magic equipment. This is the magic setting now. And you really sometimes you really cling to that equipment when you have good races, and you want to remember that setup. So
yeah, because sometimes something is like maybe a little slower but a lot more comfy or whatever, you know, or like certain things that don't necessarily come out in training. Like, I don't know, in Fuerte, the first jibe would be a little lighter than it is anywhere else that you would sail with a 5.4 or 6.2, you know, whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I think a lot of the people that watch, they don't necessarily see or pay attention to, you know. Somebody that looks super comfortable might just be, you know, that might be not necessarily because of his skill, but obviously everybody's skilled in the World Cup, but you know, that might be due to setting the gear right, you know. But you mentioned selling off your custom boards at the end of the year or during the year or whatever, and Andrea Kuki claims till this day that he bought two boards, I think, or a set of boards from you, and before you sold it to him, you actually that he took them and they weren't any better than his production boards, and then he showed it to a local shaper in Garda, and he's like, yeah, this board's been just, the rail's been sanded down and whatever, the bottom's been, you know, messed with, and so I'm just throwing it out there, you know.
Okay, well, when I would make a board for anybody, I would really want to do my best on all the
but
boards.
Apparently that was your private board, like I don't know if it was your racing board or whatever, like your private board that you would sell off used later. And he claimed that you guys were so secret about that stuff that you just would change the bottom shape just randomly, just not for people to not realize what you guys were using. Well,
maybe if it was my personal board, maybe the board was worn out, and maybe it had been on the rocks, and maybe the rails had been sanded for repair. So maybe it wasn't exactly the original shape. So, I mean, if someone goes overboard that way, yeah, they could maybe see that it's been used, or it had some pretty strong wear. And I mean, as you know, a board after 2 or 3 months can start to change shape, and it can affect you know, that really beautiful magic feeling that you get with a really nice board and the way it trims. And after a while, you might lose that trim, and perhaps it was the case, but certainly not on purpose.
Okay. So back to your competitive stuff. So you win the course title in '89. You're always up there in the slalom as well. Top 5, top 3. What do you think you missed to win the overall?
Well, definitely by wave sailing. I mean, I think the best I could do in waves one year was maybe 7th or 6th. So, And there's a lot of good guys, a lot of really good sailors. I think I was fourth, fifth, a lot of the time in the overall, and I was pretty satisfied with my placings. I worked hard on my waves, and Robbie was up there in the overall, and Bjorn was up there in the overall, and Anders was up there in the overall. So these guys are top sailors. They were just better than I was. They were better than I was in the three disciplines. And it wasn't through lack of trying or trying to get equipment. It was just the way it is, whether it's your training or whether you're the way you perform. I mean, Robbie was riding waves when he was very young, so he had a lot of experience, and he was he's an amazing sailor, as is Bjorn, living in Gran Canaria and growing up there and sailing waves and developing his skills in high winds, and as well Anders and Robert Terratahau was another a very highly skilled overall sailor who did well coming out of New Caledonia, where it was mostly flat water, and Robert moved to Maui and continued to hone his wave sailing skills to do well in the overall. So top 10 in the overall back in the 80s and 90s, I was pretty happy. I was pretty happy, but I was getting beaten by better people, by better competitors who were better in the three disciplines.
Do you miss do you miss seeing such well-rounded sailors? Do you think an overall should be a thing, or is it just way past the point of being, even close to possible?
I think it's good the way it is now. I think it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of money that we had to put into time training and our equipment. I think now with individual disciplines, I think the guys who focus on individual disciplines are better skilled in that particular discipline, and they can press and develop that side of the sport while focusing on that either waves or what the guys are doing with freestyle is incredible. Sometimes I can't understand all their moves, what they're doing, and I certainly don't have the names for it all. And then, right now with foiling, you've got to focus on that, and you've got to apply yourself to learning how to ride the equipment and develop the equipment. And so overall, it's not realistic. It's a lot harder. You've got to spread yourself a little bit thinner to do three disciplines really, really well. But that was the sport back then. And it wasn't, after 2000, that was the last year that we had the overall, and then it just went into individual disciplines. And that was okay too, because the sport needs to develop. And, the platform of professional windsurfing is to develop the sport and learn new things and create an environment which is fun for competitions and for the general public to have access to the equipment that you guys are working on.
Yeah. You mentioned foiling. Is there any temptation from your side to maybe do a little US nationals in foiling or Australian nationals? I mean, it's totally your cup of tea. It's it won't hurt any of your joints. You're super fit in terms of cardio with all the training you're doing. We got to that later. It's super technical in terms of gear with understanding how any of that works. I mean, you're well in your 50s, but I bet all the money I have in my pockets right now, you do pretty well, man. any temptation there?
No. No, I'm sorry. No temptation. No temptation. It's fun to race, but trying to race the young guys again wouldn't be such a pleasure. I know that that may be up there in a few races, but I was racing Formula till I was nearly 50 at a pretty high level in doing US nationals and chasing some of those events. And I knew even at the end of sailing Formula stuff in my 50s till I was really still pushing big sails and pushing big fins in high winds. It would be hard. It would be hard on my body, and it's definitely my arm joints. My legs and hips were fine, but my arms would give out sailing that Formula stuff, and I would be really sore and really have achy elbows and afterwards. So I don't want to go back to pushing big equipment and trying to race at that level. I've had my days and I've really enjoyed it, at some point in time you've got to say, okay, let the young guys do their thing and we can sit back and enjoy it. But you can't do it at that level for forever.
Just in case you ever wonder, I tell you, Formula is like a jumbo jet, while foiling is like a little easy glide type plane.
I could definitely see the foiling is more appealing for an aching old body than doing Formula. I mean, even slalom sailing's pretty hard work. In Maui, we have a pretty good competition series there in the summer, and it's hard. It's windsurfing is hard on the body. When you do it every day, and you're still pretty young and you're still fit, you don't notice it. But when you step away from it for maybe a couple of months and then you jump back on the board again, you really realize that windsurfing is a hard sport. It's physically very hard, and foiling looks easier on the body, which is fantastic, because you don't want to beat yourself up the way we did on our racing stuff for many years, even doing Formula and the big 12 footers and hanging onto those sails in that high wind. And so if you're talking about longevity for the body, foiling is good for professional sailors, because it's going to be a little bit easier on your bodies, and you're not going to feel that when you hit your 50s or 60s, and you're not going to feel your joints. And that's one thing I realized when I hit my 50s, all those years of windsurfing, all those hours of training, it kind of catches up on you. Your joints are a little bit stiffer in the mornings, and your arms are not as strong. And I was able to get into another sport that physically allowed me to stay pretty fit, very fit. But jumping on a windsurfing board is it's a tough sport. It's a hard sport, mentally and physically. And foiling is good. It looks good. It looks easier and tactical and very exciting to for us to watch it on the internet. You guys racing, in Silver Plana last week or the last couple of weeks. It's still amazing to see up on the starting lines on those foils, and so, I'm trying to look at the tactics going on the starting line, because it's really interesting for me to see guys maneuver away and why this guy gets a clean start and why this other guy doesn't. So you've got your work cut out for you to learn this skill of foiling. It's the development of the sport, which is fantastic for windsurfing, because you don't want to have the same sport, you don't want to have the same equipment. You want to develop it, and you want to be able. The industry wants to be able to sell different equipment, and you want the general public who are buying the equipment to have new excitement.
Yeah. So spill the beans. You watch an event like that, you watch a live stream, and you're like, what do you see? You're like, why the hell did that guy go to the left? Or is it like obvious for you with so many years of expertise what's going on? Or is it kind of hard to grasp just because it's, an online transmission?
No, I can see what's going on. It's pretty easy for me to grasp what's going on with what's going on in the race course. Later on in my career, when I when I was in my 30s and even in racing in my 40s, I realized that I started to learn that racing is complex, but also you can keep it simple and try to not overanalyze things. Try to simplify things and break the race down, like the start, and try to have a strategy to get a clean start, which you may not always do, but if you have a strategy for a start and you use that strategy either at the pin or at the boat or in the middle of the line, then it gives you the best chance to get clean wind and then decide which side of the course you want to go. I mean, windsurfing, high performance windsurfing is mostly about picking what side of the course you want to go on. You get to the corner and you attack on the lay line and you want to hit the lay line, and once you get around that top mark, you're pretty much on defense. You're just trying to keep yourself in the position. You're not doing anything stupid, and you have the whole race course to decide which way you want to go. And again, that comes down to board speed. If you have good board speed and you can have a good physical shape for yourself to get onto a plane and get out of the starting line, then it becomes fairly simple. So when I see the guys racing now, I can see, okay, these guys are going to start in the middle of the line, and you see that it's really obvious that one guy might be half a board length in front of somebody else, right on the starting line, and he gets a clean start, and off he goes to the left side of the course, and he tacks on the lay line, and he's up at the top mark, and he's in first place, and that's what you want to do. So you don't want to overanalyze things. You want to keep out of trouble as well on the race course. Keep away from having a bad crash, and that usually happens bunching up at the boat or maybe bunching up at the pin, or someone trying to go on port tack. So it's I learned later that I had to look at it in a more simple way, and I think that was probably just experience of success, having successful races and doing well for a long time, that it came down to getting your equipment prepared, testing smart, and going into the race course on race day with the best equipment you can, and then being on the race course early, knowing which side of the course to sail on. Don't leave the race, don't leave the beach 10 minutes before the start. Leave the beach 45 minutes before the start. And if you sail the whole course before the race, you know where you can go. And so the first race of the day was always one of the most important ones, because it puts you in the mood for the day. If you go out and have a good race, the first couple of races of a regatta, it really lifts your spirits and lifts your mood to have a good regatta. And sometimes when you do well in the first part of the day or first few days of the regatta, you kind of look at it in a little more simple way. It's like, okay, this is going to be okay. I'm going to have a good regatta. But if you're struggling back between 10 or 20 place or even further back, it's not fun. It's fighting, and you're trying to figure out, what can I do to get myself a little bit further up? And sometimes it's only 1 or 2%. It's not very much. Now, I listened to some of the questions you were asking Anders about, the difference between Anders and Bjorn, for example. And yes, on some of the races, Bjorn was really pretty far ahead, but sometimes those are only small percentages. And the skills that everyone had in everyone's training, Anders trained hard and Anders' equipment was good, but Bjorn was just better. He was just better. He was a little bit bigger and stronger, and he made his equipment go just a little bit faster than everyone else. And he tactically, he was very sound and got good starts. And so seeing the videos now, or, you know, some of the stuff like going on in New Caledonia the last year in New Caledonia with the racing, with the drone and everything. I mean, that was fantastic. I would sit there and really enjoy it, and really could see what the guys are doing, and you can see where the guys are starting. And, you know, it's a lot of the time it's pretty simple. It's simple. Get clean air off the start, have good board speed, and make that first jibe and get out of that first jibe. And if you're in the top 4 and you're in qualifying position, then hang on to it and get through the next round. And if you can do that day after day and round after round, it's not easy. It's not easy to do. There's a lot of variables, and there's guys coming behind you now with no rules, and someone might take you out completely out of the blue, which sucks. And, you know, back in the day, we would have rules. You know, we had really detailed rules about what you could do and what you couldn't do. So there was, it was probably a little bit easier around, you know, doing mark roundings and jibing now, back then than there was now, because you can get taken out. And I mean, I don't know what the rules are in foiling, but again, you've got to be having good speed and getting a good start, and going the right way. And keeping out of trouble. If you're in the water,
the racing getting kind of simpler in your 30s. I guess we're talking like mid 90s, late 90s. You're still up there. You're still always top 5 course racing, slalom. You know, overall, you're up there as well. When did you realize that you can really, without really sacrificing your results so much, you can really help somebody else and have like a mutual benefit by creating this kind of racing team, or just helping 1 or 2 guys or whatever, and kind of share that knowledge? And what did that even come from you? Was it your idea to create that team?
No, it's definitely a combination of all of us working together and realizing that if we all work to the same goal, then we can achieve a lot more than working individually. I mean, I met Matt Pritchard actually in Australia, Western Australia, in 1993. And we would just hang out, just being friends, and then Matt was starting to be on the tour a bit, and he was in Maui and I was in Maui, and we started working together, and we had different brands that we were sponsored by, so we would just, you know, we would go sailing together because it was fun, and we were friends. And then we came a little more serious on our testing, and we started testing equipment together, and we had a good working relationship, and we were moving forward, and we were learning things, which was fun. It's fun to learn stuff about your equipment and then go on the race course and see the result. So, you know, we were racing professionally, and we're trying to earn a living from the sport. And so you want to do the best you can and give yourself the best chance. So, and then Kev, you know, left high school and started coming to Maui, and then we started just doing the same sort of thing, working with the 3 of us and testing and going to the events and trying to help each other and you know, get better equipment. And it was fun. It's also fun being at the events when you have people who you're close to and hanging out with, and it's a very individual sport, but if you have people around you who share a common goal, and everyone lets their ego go, and you want the other guy to do well as yourself, then you know, that was a great benefit to all of us. And yeah, I had 10 more years experience on the tour than Matt and Kev, so I was able to share a lot of my knowledge and a lot of my experience with with my teammates, and then Scott came into the picture, and we all worked really well together, and we had each other when we went to events, and we shared our experiences during the day and what happened on the race course, and what it took to win races. So
some say you guys not only had each other's back on the beach. Some say that the team was called a team for a reason, and that there was some team racing going on, and a specific scenario is getting thrown around there, that you start second from the pin, you let Kevin start at the pin, you get a good start, as you do. You point out the guys on top of you, so you kind of hold them a little bit, onto a tight angle. You let Kevin just roll down the reach easily, and yeah, take it from there. Any truth in those accusations, let's say?
I wouldn't say we ever talked about team sailing our competition, but there was certainly a number of heats that were the 3 or 4 of us might be in together, and I might want to start at the pin, but I knew Kev was in the heat, so I wouldn't, and he had a better chance of the overall than I did, then I wouldn't go down and fight Kevin for the pin. And if someone was above me or who was the competition, then, I was in the competition to try to get the best result I could as well. And if Kevin was in the heat, or if Matt was in the heat, or Scott, and they were around me, yeah, I knew who they were, and I knew where they were, and I certainly wasn't going to try to, screw them up. But I think as far as team sailing in a slalom race, it's pretty hard. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of high wind, action, high speed action, and you can't, especially going around a buoy with mark roundings. There's so much that happens very, very quickly. You can set yourself up a little bit to try to, to keep out of trouble. And if my teammates below me, I'm not going to try to snake him inside. I'm going to give him space. And if it means maybe taking the guys up above me a little bit higher before the buoy coming and giving the guy space, I would do it. But a lot of the time that was, okay, I need to set myself up to get around that mark as clean as I can.
Yeah.
And if one of my teammates is below me or in front of me, then yeah, I'm going to want them to get around as well.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's fun to train together, but it's also fun to race together.
Yeah, in 2016, when the 0.7 team was doing really well, there was some accusations thrown around about team racing, and I was like, come on guys, it's just so hard being a racer. You know how freaking hard it is. So I don't know, I always take these with a grain of salt. It's yeah, I think it's just way too hard. But going back to Kevin, did you know that he's the best bet to take down Bjorn?
You never know until you do it. That's for sure. Both Matt and Kevin were very, very skilled, and they had very good, heads for racing, and they both had good work ethic, training hard and developing equipment. So I always thought it was, I think they could both do, be top in the top 3. And you have to believe that when you put a lot of effort into training and working with people. I wasn't going to be the overall guy. My days were done. So Matt got hurt in Matt got hurt in Gran Canaria, I think in '99, he won the slalom in '98. He beat Bjorn in '98 in slalom, and then in '99 Matt got hurt in Gran Canaria, broke his foot pretty bad, and at that point, Matt was doing well too. So at that point, Matt wasn't going to competitions. He was rehabbing in getting over his injury. So Kev, I think, got second in 99, and then we went into 2000. We knew we had Kev had a pretty good chance. We had good equipment, and it's just a matter of getting to the events and being calm and trying to have good heats and good rounds and you know, putting all the small details together, which was required to win the overall. Bjorn dominated the sport for a long time, and he's a tough competitor, and he's a great competitor, and he was you know, far ahead of a lot of the guys. And so in 2000, Kev started to put some good events together and started to win some events, and his wave skills were really starting to come on port tack, which was required to, you know, in Gran Canaria and Silt was a lot of times port tack. And then you know, we managed to put it together, and Kev won. So it was you know, it was a huge accomplishment for Kevin, what he did and the way that he applied himself and in his training. And you know, you can get good equipment, and we had good equipment, and we did a lot of testing, and we built a lot of sails. And you know, at the end of the day, it really comes down to that guy. You've still got to go out and execute the race. And he did that. He was mentally tough, and he had good board speed, and he was physically strong. And we did all the right things, and he did all the right things before before in the training. And we focused our training on what was necessary to deliver on race day. And so that's, you know, that was one thing we did. We trained to race, and we raced to train. We didn't go out there and lollygag around and didn't waste time. We would go out there and set buoys, and we would have organized heats. And when we would go sail waves, we didn't just go out there and free sail. We'd go out there and do heats, and we did video analysis of doing simulated heats. So we took it to a new level because there was a few of us working together.
Efficiency. Yes or no? Was it personal between the team and Bjorn?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, Bjorn was on top, so Bjorn's the guy you got to knock off the pedestal.
But it seems like, you know, if you're Bjorn, you're winning, and finally somebody realizes, okay, it'll take an effort of 4 guys, you know, and he's got like the whole world coming for him, and there's these 4 smart guys, you know, working together, and well, he saw it coming, obviously. I mean, I think we even have it in our podcast intro. The team's got to work a little harder.
Well, you know, Bjorn was number 1. So if maybe it was a little personal because he's the guy you got to beat. But everyone was trying to beat Bjorn. Anders was trying to beat Bjorn, and Robbie was trying to beat Bjorn, and we were trying to beat Bjorn, and Matt was trying to beat Bjorn. So everyone had a personal thing with Bjorn because he's the dominator. He was the king at that time.
Yeah.
We had to work hard and be methodical and be smart about our approach. And yeah, Bjorn was second in 2000, so he was still the guy to beat, and he had the target on his back.
Yeah, but so in 99, Kevin comes second, and then Neil Pride, you've heard that on the podcast. Neil Pride offers him a $250,000 deal, but it's only him. None of you guys are kind of in that deal. No Barry, no Phil, no Matt, no Scott Fenton.
Right.
Can you remember having discussions? Was it fully Kevin's decision? Were you guys somehow involved? And yeah, and is it true that he signed with Gastra for 30? Sounds a little low.
There was not a lot of discussion. In fact, I don't recall that I remembered that Kev had a huge offer with Neil Pride. I think he did have an offer, but there wasn't too much public discussion or even amongst ourselves about what the actual number was. I think at that point in time, it was pretty obvious what we had, all of us working together and the momentum we had also. And then being able to work with Barry as a brilliant sailmaker. So, and our goals that we were still working together and we had good working relationships. So I think it was a fairly easy decision that we were going to go on that route and open up a contract with Gastra and the five of us would work together at Gastra and it was tough the first year. It was tough. I remember Kev was talking about trying to fix the plotter at the Gastra loft in Haiku that we inherited from the old Gastra, the Gastra days when we came on, and it took us a while to get things together before we could make sails and make good sails, and we had some challenges the first year, that's for sure. And then we slowly got it together and everyone worked hard and we in the end it paid off. We had good results. We had, Kev won a lot of competitions and ended up being world champion and then Wade world champion and then he was Formula, two-time Formula world champion. So I think it was a good move. It was a good move in the end. You certainly can't go back in time and say, should I take the money or should I take, working with good people and having good equipment?
What feels better, winning your own world title or breaking or having like your 30 fingers in taking down Bjorn after 12 years of overall dominance?
Well, winning your own world title is certainly rewarding because it's an individual sport. But it was a long time gone between when I won and then when Kevin won. So it was very different eras, and it was different. It was great to see Kev win. It was really a special moment to share that with the team and all the work that we had put in and decisions, that we had made and that, that Bjorn was able to be beaten. So it was, it was a huge achievement for Kevin personally. I was very happy with Kev that was able to do that. It was a great moment and a great time.
Yeah. You were already the president of the PWA at that time. Well, we're going to roll the clock back to how that happened. But first, were you getting slack from other competitors or maybe from the media or something that you're kind of an active side in the world title race and you're also, the president who not only has a representational role, but also has a word in the regulations of the sport and what events are on and whatever? Was there any kind of rumbling that, it was a bit of a conflict of interest? We'll get to how you even became president because I think that's pretty key, but.
Certainly didn't have anything said to my face about it. I think there were some sailors who, people, even today, people are always going to complain about the tour. We want more wave events or we want more slalom events or in this location. So I did my very best to try to look at things separately, look at the overall sport and what was good for the sport. And the PWA, when the PWA was formed, we were formed with 4 sailors and 3 industries. So the big decisions were made in a group and the important decisions were made by voting yes, the chairman has the casting vote if there was, if there's an even vote. So it was collectively, and that was one thing I learned from being involved with the PBA. The PBA ended up being, run by maybe one or two people, and it wasn't collectively the decisions of a group. It got a little bit, the PBA got a little out of control, and that was the problem. And that's one thing I learned, was that when we set up the PWA, you wanted to make sure that you have everyone involved. You have sailors meetings where you have the sailors' input, and we have management board meetings, three times a year, and you become very transparent in the finances of the association. So at the end of the day, nobody can point the finger at me or any of the the management board members that you're doing something in your best interest. You're doing something in the best interest of the sport. You're collecting feedback from sailors at sailors meetings, and you're listening to the sailors on their ideas, and then you're making decisions at a management board level, and then implementing those decisions in rule changes or the policy making for having a new event somewhere, and sanctioning fees and membership fees and all the rest of it. So one thing I learned with the PBA was to be very transparent and try to be very objective.
Let's roll the clock to that era. So you join the tour. It's PBA. It's absolutely booming. There's just demand for windsurfing in all shapes and forms and whatever. SSM, which was a marketing agency, pretty much runs the tour. And yes, there is a ton of prize money. I think you won $100,000 in one event in Japan, if I'm correct.
Well, I wouldn't say certainly not that much.
No, that's another legend.
Total $100,000.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's definitely an exaggeration. I think one year out of Japan, I came back with maybe 15 or 20,000 in a car. I won a car as well, so
Not too bad.
I ended up selling the car back to the dealership from the slalom event that I won. But
have fun paying tax on the car at home.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So this SSM, this marketing agency is running it, and basically, as you say, the problem was that none of the sailors knew what was going on with the money, where was it coming from, where was it going, who was making what, etc. And at some point, the tour sort of collapses with some sort of, I never got a straight answer what happened there. Some sort of somebody just taking some cash and disappearing or whatever it was. And then you and a bunch of other people formed the PWA. So can you take us through that story in your recollection, in your perspective?
Yeah, so I'll just go a little bit further back in the beginning. In the beginning, there was the WSMA, which was the World Tour was run by the manufacturers. In 86, I believe the PBA was formed because the manufacturers were stepping out of the sport and they didn't want to be involved in the organization. So the sailors took over in 86 and we formed the PBA. And the PBA was an association which was set up in Munich. And then we had sailor representative committee, and you try to make decisions. Well, to cut a long story short, the PBA was primarily run by a Swiss guy, and I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but we weren't getting our prize money at the end of 1994. We weren't getting our prize money anymore. There was a big delay. 6 months, 7 months would go on, and it got worse and worse and worse during the year. And so the PBA was being used as as more of a marketing machine to get involved with other sports. And there was a lot of money coming through the PBA, a lot of cash flow, a lot of prize money from events, sanctioning fees. So there was a lot of access to the cash, and it was being used not primarily for windsurfing, it was being used for other sports. So we ended up getting control of the PVA through a legal manner, and basically bankrupted the PVA. There was a debt of over $1.5 million,
Jeez.
And so we're able to bankrupt the association, and then we start the PWA, and that's actually when we were involved with SSM, Stuart Sawyer Marketing. Stuart used to be a pro sailor back in the day, and he had some relationships with some of the guys. He managed Nick Baker for a long time. And so it was an avenue that we could have some marketing and some professional expertise when we set up the PWA in 1995. And that did go on we had SSM involved for 5 years until about 2000. And then we actually took over the association again. We were more proactive, and that's when we set it up as a US nonprofit. And so the primary, when you talk about the money being taken or cash being taken, that was more back in the PBA. And then we bankrupted the PBA and we started the PWA. And then from the PWA, we learned a lot. I mean, we had a very strict constitution, and we kept things more transparent. And in 2000, we really took it over a lot, and we had the manufacturers involved, and we had our meetings, and we set up a bank account in Maui, and I was there, and we were able to run things a little more efficiently, and still to this day, a lot of the accounting stuff that we set up as a non-profit in the US, it still exists today, and the association is still running pretty well. And it's what we set up in the beginning in 95 and in 2000 that the PWA works, is pretty healthy today financially, and it has a good system for the involvement of the industry and the way that the events are coming on and the rules. And Jimmy took over from me in 2006 as chairman and president, which I was happy to do that. I mean, I was losing momentum and putting energy into it, and I was also going through personal things. I was getting a divorce, and that was not fun, and it took a lot of energy for that. And so Jimmy came along and had a lot of new energy and new ideas, and was fantastic. And I mean, today he's doing him and Rich are working well together and doing a great job. It's not easy. It's not easy running a professional tour. There's a lot of the sailors want this, or they want that, or they want more events. And from the outside, although I'm still involved a little bit with the accounts of the PWA, I signed the tax return and overlook a little bit of the finances. But from what I see from the outside, it's pretty healthy. You're in a good spot. I mean, the media is being developed, and I had a meeting with Rich last November, and there's still some funds in a slush fund for the PWA that can be put into media, and doing this sort of promotion with yourself and the TV on the YouTube and all the live feeds that happen on the PWA is good for the sport. And yeah, it'd be nice to have more down the line wave sailing and maybe have a couple more freestyle events or racing events. But I think and get a tour sponsor. The tour sponsor was always something that everyone always wanted to try to get, was a tour sponsor, someone come in and try to run the tour and have a bit injection of cash into the tour. And the sailors make more prize money. You need prize money. You need more professionalism.
Yeah. Would you say that you were better suited for founding the association putting together all the rules or all the regulations, then later to actually dealing with all the politics and kind of managing it and getting people in a room and talking and kind of, the political side. Was that something that you think as a professional windsurfer you didn't really have to deal with, and then maybe as a chairman of the PWA was that, looking back, do you think that was like maybe something you missed?
Do I miss it now?
No. Was it something that, like, looking back at your tenure as the chairman, what do you?
I think it needed. I think at that point in time, it needed someone, maybe of my type of personality, to come in and make some hard decisions, and maybe also my attention to detail with being able to write rules and maybe look at financial financial accounts and make some hard decisions about and being able to make money and not make money and schedule a meeting. I think I was able to do that, and I think I had the personality, and I certainly had a desire to do that. I was being on the tour for 10 years, and I had wonderful experiences, and at that point it was something that I was willing to put time into and create a good base and a good tour base for the professional side of the sport to continue on, and to make sure we didn't make mistakes that had been made previously, and to set up the association going forward where it would be stable and it would be have credit with sailors in the industry and potentially outside sponsorships. It's important when also we were dealing with a lot of the events, like for in the Canaries, the local governments were involved. So you had to have credibility and you had to have stability in the association for people to want to put money into it, and for money and people to get involved. And that's something my goal was when I was involved as chairman, and to create a stable environment for the sailors and for the industry. And yes, sometimes it means making hard decisions, and maybe making decisions that people didn't always agree with. But trying to look at the overall picture of the sport and professional side of the sport, I think back then the PWA did that.
Yeah,
and I think
that's kind of what I'm getting at. That like your style is pretty much ruling, how you say, iron fist with the iron fist. Like, so then to set up the association, that was perfect. But then the guys, like I talked to the guys kind of generation below you, like I talked to Arnon, and he was like, yeah, the guy was straight up scary. I was scared to walk up to him. He was our president, but like we had so much respect and so much like you set everything up the way that you thought it was good, but there was no discussion in terms of, I don't know, overruling these decisions or whatever. And then, like a good politician, even if he doesn't agree with you, he'll make you think that you're his best friend or whatever, you know what I mean? So that kind of fizzling in the end is a sort of a political position, isn't it? The chairman of the PWA in some ways.
You're not there to make best friends with people. You're there to overlook, it's a business. And a business is, or a non-profit association. The sailors want to benefit with prize money, and you want to have events being run. And sometimes someone has to come in and make a decision. You can't have all these Indians and no chief. Yes, at some point, you got to come in and go, you know what, this is not right. We need to change this, and this is the way it's going to be. Because sometimes if you don't make that decision, there can be, a negative result from not making a decision. So overall, sometimes you're going to piss people off. But I think at the end of the day, I think we're able to achieve a pretty good tour. And you see the PWA today is pretty stable. And I think that's a lot of the foundation that not only I did, that there was other sailors involved as well who were involved with writing rules, and we had a committee, and we made decisions. There's seven people, 3 from the industry and 4 sailors. But someone has to be a leader, and someone has to, be the front of the train and drag the train along and make it go forward, as Rich Page and Jimmy are today. They have involved with the industry, and the industry help make the decisions. But sometimes at the end of the day, when you have to make a hard decision, Rich or Jimmy might have to make that together. But I think, both of those guys are doing an amazing job, and it's not always easy. I mean, Rich Page was a judge when he first came on the tour years ago. I mean, but the experience that he has now in the PWA is, you can't teach this in university or a college or anything. He has so much experience, and as well as Jimmy. So it's important to have that continuity. Eventually, someone's going to have to come in and replace Jimmy as a chairman or a president, someone who can work. And even Rich Page, someone's going to have to replace Rich Page. Rich won't do it, won't do it forever. He's going to get old, and he's going to want to retire, or he's going to lose momentum and motivation, and maybe he wants to do other things in his life, such as I did, or other guys who were pro sailors. So, but I think right now the PWA is in a good spot, and there's good people involved and experienced people. And I mean, it's always encouraging for me to see such, people such as yourselves who are sailors and who love the sport and have been involved for a long time, come in and put energy to the sport, and creating, with the media. So, social media and online media now is so popular and so accessible that that's what windsurfing needs to do. So you're going to create yourself an opportunity for the future, as do the guys involved with doing all the online stuff at events. So it's just the way the sport evolved. People are in the sport and they love it, and then they start to see other opportunities and that they can help the sport, and that's what we need. That's what I did. That's what other committee members doing, and Jimmy and other guys who are on the management board now. I met with Graham Ezzy a few times in Maui. He would come and ask me a little bit about what happened in the past, and try to understand on how he can influence and help to make decisions going forward for the association.
Yeah.
So I mean, nothing stays the same. People change, and things happen. It's just it's just my situation with Kevin, coming, at the end of his time with Maui Sails. It's things change.
Yeah, perfect segue. So
there you go.
Right at that time when Jimmy took over the presidency or the chairmanship from yourself at the PWA, you were, well, I guess you still are, co-owner or owner of Maui Sails. Was that something that you had in the back of your mind, like, once I'm done competing, I'll try to start a brand and have a crack at that? You've always been involved with boards and, sales, developing, working with Barry for so many years. And finally, you guys just leave Gastro and start your own thing. So how did that come together?
I think it wasn't something that was in the back of my mind. It's something, it just happened, and I wanted to continue to be involved with the sport and develop equipment, and so it kind of happened by default. You get to a certain point and in your life and with your career, and you come to a crossroads and you have to make a decision on what you want to do. And our contract with the team in Gastro was it expired, and they didn't want to renew the contract, and we had a decision at that point what we would continue to do, and we decided to reignite the brand Maui Sails, which Barry had started and Jeffrey Bjorn back in '79, and it was sitting dormant for a while, and then we restarted it all and put our own personal money into it, and we started that brand, and it's not easy, I can tell you that. As you've heard from other guys who are in the industry, it's not easy to start a brand. You have to put money and time into it, and it was unfortunate that it didn't take off financially the way we wanted it to or expected it to, and you have to make decisions and you have to take less money, and that's certainly one of the motivations, I think, for Kevin wanted to leave.
Yeah. In his words, it's like, I'm actually investing into the company. I'm not getting paid by any other sail brand. I'm actually paying the sail brand to make sails. I'm investing, I'm flying around the world on my own expense, etc. And then I come back to Maui, and Phil's in the middle of the divorce, having, as you mentioned, not a lot of fun, and Barry is sort of checked out. It's not really, Barry, I think is a couple of years older than you, and it seemed like at that point he wasn't really that much into it. And then the famous story, which Kevin revealed, that after the minute he quit, you were at his house and you just grabbed all the sails, and well, if you're not with us, you're against us, I guess. Kind of a clear.
Well, I'm not denying that. I probably did go to his house and got his equipment. So if I can go back in time and do it differently, then maybe I would do it. But sometimes when things end, it's not always a clean way to do it. There's never a right or the right time or the easy way to do something like that. And I don't know whether that you can say that Barry and I checked out. I mean, we were still working in the business and we were still trying to make money, and I can, I understand Kevin's decision, that's for sure, because he was still, in his prime and still able to make money, and he was, made a decision which was best for him. And I understand that. Do I regret how it went down and that we're not still friends or still close? Yeah, I do. And I'm sorry for that. But at some point you got to let bygones be bygones and move forward, and that's it's the way life goes sometimes.
Yeah. Would you, if you had to do it again, would you start a windsurfing business, and would you do it with your friends?
I would. Yeah, you can't go back in time. You really can't. I mean, you can look at your whole life in a perspective of, in hindsight, being through your life and look back, and you can make some different decisions along the way. But you can't have regrets. You've got to go forward. And would I do things a little different? Yeah. The big decisions that I made? No, I wouldn't change those big decisions. I would still start a brand and still continue to go in the path that I took.
Yeah. And Maui Sails, I think not many people know that it's still going. They actually moved to online sales. like, how much of your life is still dedicated to running that business, to developing sales, to doing all of that?
Certainly not how it was in the beginning, that's for sure. Yeah, we are selling online. It's only, you know, I would consider it a, you know, a small business. We don't have an active R&D. We don't have team writers. We still have, you know, some customers who we sell to. That actually the company still makes money, which is not a lot of money, but a little bit. And every day I don't put a lot of time into it. I put some time into it and want to keep it going. But the windsurfing industry is pretty tough. I mean, there's a lot of sail makers and a lot of brands, and it got to a point where you had to decide if you want to invest money into a business and keep building it. You may not necessarily get that money back.
We have some beautiful sanding going on in the background, I believe.
Construction somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is what you really wanted to talk about, didn't you? You finish your competitive career. And I don't know how many years pass, but I don't think many. And you just start another one straight away. I mean, I guess you were into running before. You start with marathons, you know, as a hobby, I guess. Then you go into the triathlons and, you know, the famous Ironman, which, well, the final is right at your doorstep, isn't it? What drags you into, I guess, endurance sports? Because it's so, for me, it's just so much different to windsurfing. And maybe that's what got you into it. And also, I think there's this study that shows that the older you get, the longer the attention span is, and the more we are kind of attracted to these endurance sports, just because they're like, you know, when we're young, we want to do the explosive stuff. And then your endurance but it doesn't decrease with age.
Yeah.
So then, yeah. So what attracted you to, I guess, marathon running first?
Yeah, I did my first marathon at the end of 2006, and I set it just as a personal goal because I was going through a divorce, and I wanted to, you know, let off some steam, and I did it, and I enjoyed it, and it was, you know, and I wasn't doing the tour anymore, so I was able to channel my energy and some of my time that I had to you know, a new goal. So it was just having a new goal, and it was physically obviously very demanding, and I got enjoyment from that. Whether you call it, you know, enjoying the pain, or I think it was just the whole fascination of also doing endurance for, you know, running a marathon for 4 hours or 4.5 hours, and it was I was fascinated with the fact that you could change the body and get in incredible physical shape, and I was still strong enough to do it, and it has a crossover in your whole life, as eating and sleeping and your state of mind, and I was still windsurfing you know, quite a bit, and it was helping, you know, stay in shape for windsurfing, and I just loved it. I fell in love with the physical endorphins you get from running long distance and all the training, and also there was, you know, a social aspect to it as well. You meet new people, and you learn a new sport, and you create a new social outlet, and it was just something new and exciting for me. And then I got into you know, did a couple marathons, and then got into triathlons because some friends were doing it, and they suggested I try it. And you know, one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you know, I was lining up doing Hawaii Ironman in 2011. I did my first Hawaii Ironman, through an invitation, actually, through my windsurfing connections. I got invited to do it. My first Ironman I did in Frankfurt in 2009 at the European Championship was also through invitation. And I just did it for a personal challenge. I wasn't winning anything. For me, winning was just getting over the finishing line, being on your feet for over 13 hours or 12 hours, doing a 3.8 kilometer swim and 180 kilometer bike ride, and then running a marathon 40 kilometers it's an incredible feat, a physical human feat to do that. And I was just, so interested in the way the body reacted and mentally applying yourself to be able to achieve that. And over 12 years, I did my last Ironman in Hawaii in 2017. I did 11 Ironmans, 22 marathons, and 20 half Ironmans in a span of 12 years. So it's a lot of fun. It's really a lot of fun doing that sort of training and doing that to your body. I mean, I realize now that I really beat myself up pretty hard. Last September, I had a surgery on my Achilles tendon from a bone spur that had grown on the back of my heel from just overuse. So I had that removed, and I haven't ran very much lately. I'm still riding and swimming, but I can. The recovery is up to 12 months or longer for they detach the Achilles tendon and cut your bone away and then reattach the Achilles. So
last September you had it. I find that hard to believe because last November I was in Maui and I'm pretty sure I saw you run past Hokipa.
No, it wasn't me. No.
Okay.
So I've just started running again now, but it's not very much.
Okay, so what's your personal best Ironman time?
I did 11 hours and 4 minutes in Western Australia one year. And my personal best for a marathon, I did 3 hours 36 and 1 hour 45 for a half marathon. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it's fast. It feels like I was sprinting for 3.5 hours for my PR in a marathon, but it's a long race, and an Ironman is a long race too. And there's a lot of things you have to manage. Right from when you wake up in the morning at 3 o'clock in the morning to eat, and the preparation needed to complete that distance is, it requires a lot. And that's what attracted me to endurance sport was the attention to detail and the training which was necessary. And you set up training programs, and you eventually get a coach, and all the things you need to do with your bike and all the parts of your bike. You can get the carbon wheels and
there you go. You found the gear.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot about gear and then getting off the bike and then being able to run that distance. It's managing your pace and managing the fuel and what you eat during the day. And then, within a couple of hours getting off the bike in an Ironman, you're really in the pain cave. You're hurting. Your legs are starting to scream, and it feels like you're carrying a piano on your back. So you've got to use every mental strength you have in your heart and soul to get yourself to the finishing line. And that's it's appealing. It was appealing to me. It still is. I don't know if I do any more Ironmans or marathons, but it's pretty fun. It's a lot of fun. And you keep in physical shape. Like you can go and run for an hour like it's nothing. So it's really very rewarding.
So screaming down the first reach with 7 other guys around you in Pozo, or running the last 10 Ks of an Ironman in Oahu? Which one gives you more joy?
I definitely think the slalom racing is a highlight. I mean, running at high speed on the water, doing high speed on the water and in high winds and having everyone close around you coming around that first buoy is pretty special. And if you can get out of that first buoy in the top four and hang on to it around that course, it's pretty fun. And it's, we did a lot of years of doing that. So, yeah, windsurfing, the pro windsurfing days was a lot of fun, and you make a lot of good friends and meet a lot of good people and a lot of competitors, and you get to travel around the world and see different parts of the world, and you're involved with, a lot of different people on different levels. So traveling is always a fantastic education.
Yeah.
And then being able to do a professional sport at a high level is even better.
Yeah, it's amazing. When you look at, we touched on that a little bit with course racing, but when you look at windsurfing these days, we found out throughout this podcast that you're actually watching quite a bit, which is amazing for me. What do you see? What do you see? Like, the gear has changed so much. The way we sail has changed so much. The way the guys wave sail and jump and ride waves, and the boards and the multi-fins and all that. What do you see when you put on the old PWAWorldTour.com and have an event going?
It's similar to what we went through. I mean, there's equipment being developed, and it's all new, and it's exciting, and it's different, and the guys who are doing it are really professional, and everyone is training a little bit different to the way we used to go. We would spend hours and hours on the water. We didn't do too much physical training in the gym or too much cross training, but we did a little bit. But now you see guys being really smart about their time and the way they're professionals, and I really enjoy it. I really see the different faces, coming through, and younger guys. I really love it when the younger guys are doing well, because people like Antoine is absolutely phenomenal what he's doing at his age. It's incredible, and also Bjorn, competing well into his 40s. But it's nice to see new guys coming and new faces, and the sport being developed still, because the sport needs it. The sport needs to be developed, and guys being smart and thinking about their equipment, and having all the training, all the guys in Tenerife doing this training. And I think, it's really enjoyable to see that, and makes me feel good that what we did back in the day was good too, but all the new guys coming on, and people still having passion for the sport. And like yourself doing the web stuff on the internet, and all the live feeds. It's it's a big pleasure for me to see all that, and to see the new people in the sport, and the high level of competition still.
Yeah, great to hear that. That's amazing to hear. I would actually never think you'd be so into it still, but that's great. Look, we have this little quick hitter thing we end with, which is not really a quick hitter, but we just ask all the people the same questions. So yeah. I guess that's the way to end. What are your pet peeves?
Ooh. Probably overtraining. I would say that's one of my weaknesses and my strength, but I think over the years, just especially when I got into Ironman and stuff, overtraining. I work out too hard, push myself too hard, push my body physically too hard.
How many times a day do you pee your Ironman wetsuit?
Oh, wow. Well, back in the day, I would definitely be peeing in my wetsuit in cold weather, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, but at least. Yeah, when you're on a bike on an Ironman, you're not getting off to go to the bathroom, so you're just putting it. You're doing it there, right there on the bike. Sometimes it could be 4 or 5 times.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. That's even worse than the wetsuit. Much worse.
In the beginning, I would get off to go to the bathroom, and now I don't. Just let it go.
That's amazing. Your guilty pleasure?
A guilty pleasure.
Doesn't seem like you have many.
Yeah, I've become a coffee drinker since I spent time in Italy in the last 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, like my coffee.
Your top 5 windsurfers of all time.
Obviously, Robbie and Bjorn would have to be at the top 2 there, and they can switch out. For different reasons, they would be the top 2 guys for what they've done in the sport, and what eras they came in. I think what Antoine is doing and has done during his career has also been really, really amazing. I think you'd have to put him up there in the top 5. I look at you got to look at some of the girls, Abaya and Daina have done incredible things in their career, and Sarah Keita, and I mean, some of the guys did the individual sport, in the individual disciplines now, doing the freestyle and some of the stuff Ricardo does. I mean, I think Kevin has to be one of the, I would put Kevin in the top 5, I think I made my comments after his interview, being good in 3 disciplines is not easy and over a long period. So when you're wave world champion and formula world champion in a span of 2 or 3 years, those are completely different sports, and you've got to apply yourself in different ways. So I think there's enough names up there now, but all the guys who are in the top 10 that we competed with in all the disciplines are great in their own ways. There's some great windsurfers back in the day. There's some great windsurfers now, and there was great windsurfers back in the 90s and the 2000s. But it's everything is changing, and again, Robbie, Bjorn, Anders, those guys are incredible, and Antoine and Kevin and the sisters were amazing. The way they keep competing as well.
Yeah.
So
When you mentioned Antoine before, I actually wanted to ask you, because you definitely analyzed this in your head. I'm pretty sure you did. When you guys were winning, or when you were winning with the team, let's say with Kevin, Antoine was kind of thereabout, but wasn't really challenging, right? And then all of a sudden, kind of his late 20s or his early 30s, something seemed to click when we got on the production gear, and and he's come on kind of late. I talk about that with Kevin. Kevin was overall world champion at 24. I'm not sure if Antoine won a racing world title before he was 30. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, Antoine is interesting. He's definitely a late bloomer. He started winning all his world titles in his 30s. I don't know why that is. I mean, Antoine was tapping on the door already, early 2000s when Kevin was winning, and I think he just got that extra experience and was able to get also his equipment together enough to where he could start to really put his skills to test. I mean, he's a big and strong guy, and he's always been a big, strong guy, but I think probably he really got his equipment dialed in that part of his career, and so he became more one with his equipment and was able to really start to put it together and start to win his world titles, in his 30s and his late 30s,
and his 40s.
40s, which is it's remarkable what he's done. But he was a late bloomer for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Okay, back to our little set of questions. Your most underrated windsurfer of all time.
Wow, underrated windsurfer. That's a tough one. I know Anders mentioned Finian. I think that was a good one. I think Finian, that was a good one for Finian. I mean, Finian was so big and strong and fast, and he's won some events, but maybe not enough. But there's a lot of good races. I think Anders was I think Anders was maybe a little bit underrated as well. I mean, he came along at a time when Bjorn was dominating the sport, but Anders was an incredible racer and incredible skills and incredible talents. And if it wasn't for Bjorn, maybe, Anders would have won a lot more world titles. But Bjorn was there keeping that top spot of the podium. So you can't take anything away from all those guys, what they've done and their talent and their work ethics. And so that's a tough question.
Obstacles in slalom, yes or no? Last reach, over 20 knots, jump a little sausage.
No, I think the slalom, the way it is now, it's pretty good. I mean, I'd like to see some shorter courses. I think the courses are a little bit long. I think if you make the courses a little bit shorter, it'll keep a little bit more, make people more compact.
Beach starts, would you add a beach start from time to time?
If the conditions allow it, yeah. I think a beach start would be good. New Caledonia, first time I went to New Caledonia was 81, and then 83 I went there and won the Numia Cup. We did all beach starts right there at the beach at Arnsvara. So yeah, you can do it. It's a little unfair, but if you can get off the sand clean, we did a lot of beach starts in Europe, running with our stuff on our heads down at the water. That was always a skill that you had to develop. Robbie was so good at that.
Yeah, light feet getting off the beach, like nowadays we're all so heavy and, my natural weight is definitely not in the 90s and I'm, my racing weight is like 92, 93, maybe even more, and that definitely doesn't go hand in hand with beach starts, but it would be really interesting actually. I think it would be. And it's spectacular too, isn't it? I think that's where it came from, to have.
Well, it would definitely be good for the media and to mix it up, but it's not entirely fair when everyone's running off the beach, especially if the wind is a little bit onshore. Then we always had to fight for different positions, and when you jump on your board in sand, it's pretty tricky doing beach starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for the people that don't know, like you get your position by how you finished the heat before. So let's say if you were first, you'd probably get the lowest or the highest, not sure, probably the highest position upwind. But then sometimes the lowest position would be favored. So you'd be like letting guys pass you on the last reach. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, you'd get your position by the previous heat. In the beginning, you would pull a card out and you would just see what number your card was. And that's how you got these positions. But yeah, it was pretty tough doing beach starts. I wouldn't recommend it for the PWA today.
Okay, one spot you'd have to sail for the rest of your life every single day.
Well, Hukipa is such a convenient location, and I can do all my you can do slalom and course racing at Hukipa. We've taken our formula stuff out there, so the wind is usually pretty good up there at Hukipa every day. So yeah. I think Hukipa is the spot.
Worst excess baggage bill or check-in story.
Say what?
Worst excess baggage bill or check-in story.
I think Kevin talked about that the day, when we got busted with American Airlines and we had to pay a lot of money to get our bags back. But yeah, we did pretty well with the excess baggage. There was a few times that we got hit with a lot of money coming out of Canaries or going to Silt with a lot of bags. But yeah, I think the day that we definitely learned our lesson with American Airlines.
Yeah, that's good. That's good for your PWA presidential campaign credibility. Like, hello, this is the president of the PWA. I checked in a couple bags with fake tags. Could you let me know where they are?
We got a little bit of trouble, so we had to kind of talk our way out of it and buy our way out of it with a bit of money. But yeah, it turned out okay in the end.
Yeah. Who was your worst competitor?
Wow. Worst competitor. You know, I really remember having a lot of tussles with Sven Rasmussen.
Oh yeah.
A lot of course racing days on those starting lines down at the pin end. Sven would fight for that pin, and even the slalom days, Sven was always down at that pin, and so I remember Sven was really a tough competitor. I remember him a lot on the race course and in the course racing days and the slalom days. And he was a great sailor too.
Not many people know, and actually Sven's kind of a little guy, but he was quite capable, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, Sven went to the Olympic Games. I mean, Sven was good enough to win the Olympics. I think he was 4th in the Olympics. He did. But yeah, no, Sven was a good racer, really a top racer. Very skilled in course racing and developing equipment and sales and everything. So yeah, it's no surprise that he's successful in starboard with what he's done with that brand.
Yeah. Well, this might be the same answer, but who would you like to hear on the podcast?
Yeah, Sven would really be interesting. He's got a lot of, he's a good thinker. He's got a lot of good stuff to say. I mean, I don't know if you've done Bjorn yet. Bjorn would always be interesting on a podcast to get his perspective on things. And it's always easy now that his career's finished to look back on it. You get a better perspective and you can look at it a little bit more maturely. And Bjorn's always got interesting things to say.
Yeah, I find Bjorn a lot more relaxed these days and kind of entertaining with a lot of the stories than back when he was competing. He was like, I just got the really tail end of it, but he was still like the Terminator, Now he's so much more relaxed.
He's a tough and smart competitor.
Yeah, I did drop him a DM, but let's see what happens. Hopefully he comes on. Thanks so much, Phil, for I guess this hell of a history lesson, to be honest, for somebody, from my generation. I think a lot of times we don't appreciate, the road you guys paved for us, and all the, all the heavy lifting you did for us to enjoy what we have now, and yeah, great talk, man. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I'll call you for some more racing tips later on.
That's good.
Cheers, man. Enjoy Sydney.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I hope you liked that podcast. A real interesting chat with one of the main guys of the sport who has been around and knows all his stuff. As usual, give us a thumbs up, like if you liked it. Let us know in the comments below who you would like to see on the podcast. And if you want to chip in some beer money, keep the podcast coming. It would be much appreciated. I think they are becoming a solid part of Windsurfing TV. And my hat is dipped to Maciek Rutkowski for churning them out. Good skills, Maciek. Beers coming soon if you guys chip them in. Okay, put more videos up there from recent ones and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another episode.